So I hope that you have a cup of coffee within arm's reach, because there's kind of an unspoken rule. I'm going to make it spoken at this point. If you're going to consider yourself a developer, you need to have coffee. So with that said, let's get started. So let's talk about variables and data types and collections of these data types. Now, these are the building blocks or the Legos that you're going to build your computer programs with. And we have a lot of different data types. In fact, if we take a look at the Microsoft Developer Network documentation, we can see all of the different basic data types or primitive types that we have available. If we wanted to take a look at byte, and we could see the values that you can give it, a range of 0 to 255. If you go outside of that bounds, then you may be prone to an error. Then you also have unsigned bit integer. What this basically means is the size of 1 byte in memory, and it will always be an 8-bit integer, even if it was if you just had 1 or even a 0 initialized inside the variable. And then this is where it's actually defined. So we can click in here and see in the .NET framework that it is actually a struct. And if you don't know what a struct is, just be glad that you heard the term struct, and let's just leave it at that. So let's go back. We can take a look at an integer, and it's a system int32, and this is the range of values that it could be. And if that range is too small, then we can always go to a long, and you can see that the range is just ridiculous. I mean, it's 9 quadrillion, something like that. It's huge, and you can see that the size is considerably larger than just a 32-bit. So let's talk about declaring data types. So with a byte, declaring, you just say byte, and then give it a name, my byte. It could be anything, and put a semicolon. Now, when you do the semicolon, this is declaring, but we can do the same for character. We do the same for string. And we can do the same for integer. And so on and so forth. As you can see, it's pretty simple. And the same thing for collection types. We can do a byte array. We could do an array list of strings. Now, in order for this to work, you can see we get a red line. The compiler, Mr. Compiler, is getting very, very angry with us and is saying, hey, if you want to do this, you got to do something else. What we can do is just see the potential fixes, and we can actually import system.collections. I'll do this by hand, and the reason is because we're going to be using lists and dictionaries. So if I just do the quick actions, then I'm going to have to do this anyway. So if I just come up, I could just delete this, or we could just add system.collections, and now array list will work. We could do an object, which is just a generic thing. We could also do an int, or we could do a string, or whatever you want. Let's just do string, because string is fun. And then we can say my string list. We could, again, name this whatever we want. And then finally, dictionaries. And as you see here, it actually takes 2 values, and this is because we can actually have what is called a key value pair. And what that essentially means is if we use the key, which is this first value, it could be like, well, let's say string, and we can say another string. And this could be anything. It could be object, it could be anything. So we could say another string. And with this, we actually need to say my dictionary, and we could just leave it at that. And so this is just declaring. Now, all this is saying is, hey, Mr. Compiler, Mr. Computer, if I use the word my dictionary, I'm talking about this. This type of data type, you know exactly what to look for. So now it's actually initializing. So initialization is actually giving values. Now, if I did byte, my byte equals, and say 33, it's gonna say, hey, hold on a second. You already made this bucket, so why are you trying to do it again? And so that's why the red line is there. So if you get rid of the red line, that's how you do it. But now we're just reassigning. We're just reassigning what we already had in there. All right, so we can do the same thing for down here. Incidentally, we could also assign during the declaration, so it's declaring and initializing at the same time. And with characters, we use these single quotes. So we could say M for my first letter in my name. Now the squiggly lines, these green squiggly lines, are basically saying, hey, you've made it, you've given it a value, that's great, but you're not using it. So in order to use it, we can just print to the screen with a console.writeLine and just say my car. And now if we ran this program, guess what? It would display. And so there it is. So we can do the same for all of these other items. We could say my string equals hello. And everything in C#, for the most part, needs to be ended with, every statement needs to be ended with a semicolon. And we can say my int equals 11. And in a double, I could say my double equals 99.99. Now, doubles are the default. If you need something to be very, very precise, then you could use a decimal. Generally, floats are not used. However, they are an option. And in fact, if we go over to the documentation, we can take a look at floats. And we see that the precision is only 7 digits. If we go to double, we can see that the precision is much larger. But if we go to decimal, the precision is a lot larger than all of those. And so if you're ever dealing with money or you're dealing with scientific measurements or something of that nature in your programs, you definitely want to use the decimal. Now watch this, 19.9, or add a couple. If you see here, Mr. Compiler says there's something wrong here. If we hover over here, we can see that it's looking for an F for the float. So float, you need to add an F. It can be lowercase, it can be capital, doesn't matter. And the same for decimal. Decimal is going to be looking for something as well. So if we go to decimal and we give it a value of 3.14159265, so at this point it's looking for an M. So we can give an M either in lowercase or in uppercase. This time we'll do it in lowercase. And for Boolean, this is basically a true or false or a yes or no. What we're going to add here, we'll just say my Boolean, and we're going to say true. We could also say my Boolean is false, and we just reassigned it. What all of these look like in the console. There you go. And then for collection types, if we say my byte array, so with the byte array we can do new byte array and give it a value. And that's how we would give values to a byte array. We could print out the entire array. So this is a little advanced, but just to show you how these things kind of work, we could say the element, and that could be named anything, inside the my bytes array, and we will just print this thing out. And here are all of the byte elements in that byte array. So it's a collection. I only had to write element, and I could use a loop in order to print all of these guys out. And just understand that that same process will work for each of these other collection types below. So for instance, my array list and here we can do the same thing. And instead of a console.write, we'll do a console.write line, we'll do a console.write. Hello, Mark. And for a list, here's a list of strings. We could do my string list equals new list string of type string. And then we could just simply say my string list dot, oh, look at that, add. That might do something. And then we can just copy this 2 more times. They have a space. And then print it out again. And here's our what's up. And then for dictionaries, it's a little different. It's just like lists, except now we have 2 elements that we have to think about. So for a dictionary, we can say my dictionary equals new dictionary string string. Okay, and then now we can do my dictionary dot add. And if we hover over this, we can see what it's looking for, a string and a string. So we'll do that. We'll say Mark is an awesome teacher. And we could do another one. It says you are an awesome student. And now we can iterate through, or which is a fancy term for just going through all of the elements in the dictionary. However, at this point, it's a little different because now we need to iterate through something else, a key. So we want all of the keys. And now if we run this will be a little difficult to see because everything's going to be on one line. But Mark and then you. And this is because we got the keys. But now, let's say if we, and I'm just going to add a new line character to this. And say if we say values, and we run it, is an awesome teacher, and are an awesome student. Now the other way that I can do this is instead of doing element, I could just do a regular console.writeLine and access my dictionary, just pass in a key. And now, if we run it, then for Mark, we will see is an awesome teacher. And if we change this to you are an awesome student.